Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon and being patient with our technical difficulties. I am Lisa Washington Thomas. I am the branch chief for the self-sufficiency branch in the Office of Family Assistance, and I want to welcome you to our introductory webinar for the TANF Learning Community. The OFA has a long, rich history of learning communities and policy academies. We have been hosting multiple learning academies and policy academies and learning communities since the 1990s, when our first was the Urban Partnership Initiative. And this time we are giving you an opportunity to participate in our next TANF Learning Community, focusing on reopening and helping you to engage with other peers as you tackle the challenges of reopening in the post-pandemic world. The TANF Learning Community is 18 months. We will ask you to self-nominate yourself to be, and your nominations will be reviewed, and once those we will select 6 to 10 state, tribal, or local TANF programs who will participate in learning from each other, from learning from experts, as well as hearing information from federal resources. I'm hoping that you will enter where you're joining us from in the chat. I have entered my information. I'm Lisa Washington Thomas from Washington, D.C., and it would be nice to hear from you where you're from, what state, or what agency, or what tribal TANF program. I look forward to this webinar. I look forward to seeing your nominations and working with you over the next 18 months. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will turn this over to Jeanette Hersick.
Hi, good afternoon. Everybody hear me okay? Good, thanks, John. I want to thank you, Lisa, and I want to echo really Lisa's welcome here. It's really exciting. We have over 50 participants today and representing 21 different states and 5 different tribes. So it's exciting to see all the interest that we're having, and really great. We're going to spend about the next 30 minutes. We're going to share information about the TANF Learning Community, its focus, our striving for transformational change, some of the components of technical assistance that will be provided through this learning community, and then also just some of the basic logistics for program nomination. I am Jeanette Hersick, and I'm a senior fellow with BLH Technologies, Inc., and I'm the project manager of this effort, and I'm joined with my colleague, John McKay from Mathematica, and we will be taking you through a little bit about what is this TANF Learning Community. We're going to close out the webinar with about 10 or 15 minutes at least of answering any questions that you have. And at that point, John will be able to take you off mute, or you can take yourself off mute and ask the question as we go through. If you have questions and you want to post them in the chat box, please feel free to do so. We really appreciate, hoping that any kind of questions you have, we will try to answer them today. If we don't have answers, we'll get them to you as soon as possible. All right, so, what's this learning community about? It's really about a topic that's really at the top of everyone's mind. What will TANF programming look like in a post-pandemic world? The pandemic really disrupted the status quo, not only on the macro level with the economy, but really on the micro level with individuals and families across the country and really across the world. So it impacted about the way we go about our business and what human services and public health systems look like and how best to serve their clients. Early this winter, and as Lisa said, OFA has been sponsoring for the past 2 decades, policy academies and learning communities. And in early winter, OFA sponsored a series of listening sessions with a variety of federal partners across varied agencies, as well as TANF program directors. We wanted to hear about that from them, what they really saw as the challenges that they're facing, as well as some of the solutions that they put in place to address the needs of their clients while the pandemic was raging, and how they were starting to deliver services in new and different ways. So based on these listening sessions, we've designed this TANF Learning Community really to be focused on how we might reimagine TANF programs to support family economic independence and mobility in a post-pandemic world. And in there, we have 3 focus areas that were very much so identified in these listening sessions. First was, how are we adapting to new in-person and virtual realities? What does that look like? How does that play out in the TANF programs? Secondly, what does it mean to have an evolving and responsive systems? How do you develop new partnerships to solve some of these really hard issues that are being faced by these families? And lastly, what does it mean to build a post-pandemic workforce? Everyone has heard about the economic realities of the pandemic, and how does that play out in creating opportunities, work opportunities, and education opportunities for TANF clients to best position them for career pathways and moving forward. So that is what I love to call it the TLC, because to me it is my tender loving care. We put a lot of energies and efforts to this, but this TANF Learning Community is all about. Next slide. So what does the TLC include? Well, we've already, Lisa already kind of highlighted this: access to relevant expertise, training, and coaching. So what does that mean? We bring to selected teams subject matter experts and thought leaders, expose teams to really some of the cutting edge research that's going on underway across the country. We dedicate a site coach to work hand in hand with each site selected to help them in designing and developing their innovation, and in also just thinking differently about their programming to improve it and improve their systems and their families, and support the families that they're serving. Secondly, this learning community will be grounded in a framework for systems change called Learn, Innovate, and Improve. Several of you may have already heard this. It's lovingly called LI squared, we call it, but it promotes program refinement based on key stakeholder feedback. And it's focused in on continuous learning and continuous improvement. And lastly, as OFA has in every policy academy or learning community they have supported, it's about learning in community. It's a critical component of learning. It's about sharing stories, solving problems, co-creating potential solutions. And it's based on the principle that everyone has something to learn and something to teach. Next slide, John. We're going to be working on, over the next 18 months, this is an 18-month endeavor. It will start in July, and John will take us through more of a timeline. But in one phase, one component of our support will be biweekly site coaching. If based on the needs of the site, we will have a dedicated, experienced coach to work with you. In addition, we will provide up to 3 site visits or team meetings where we will support you in your implementation teams in your community, in your state, bringing in either really some expertise from the outside that can help you move forward with your implementation and planning, or that maybe you need facilitation of your site implementation team and your coach can help you do that. The third component is really focused on trainings, and these are responsive trainings. It's reflective about what you need to move forward. And they'll be on a variety of different subject matter domain areas to actually help you in designing, developing, and implementing whatever program plan you have put in place. The fourth component, we will be doing virtual webinars. We will also be bringing in experts to support you. As time goes on, hopefully, some of these convenings and site visits will move from a virtual mode into 2022 as an in-person support structure. And lastly, we will be providing tools and products to support your innovation and help you in implementing your initiative. So that's overall a very broad brush components of what we are doing in providing coaching, subject matter expertise, and opportunities for trainings as well as peer-to-peer learnings. So with that, I'm going to turn this, John, over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Jeanette. And welcome everybody. It's great to see some familiar names on the list and plenty of names I don't recognize. Really appreciate your interest in this TANF Learning Community. So as Jeanette said, my name is John and I am a senior analyst at Mathematica. I'm also helping lead up the team in partnership with BLH, working with our federal partners, and very excited for what we're launching here. I want to say a little bit about the framework for change that Jeanette introduced, LI squared. This may be familiar to some of you, less so to others. So what is this? What's the purpose of Learn, Innovate, Improve? Well, as you embark on a large scale sort of innovation like you might in the TANF Learning Community, it's really important to think about how do you get that change to stick? And so putting a lot of thought into the design and the development of that, drawing on the best available research, but then taking some time to iteratively test it out, tweak it, improve it, and scale it. That's exactly what LI squared is trying to accomplish. This framework was developed several years back in partnership with ACF because there wasn't a great model out in the field for how we test and scale innovative practices and programs. And in fact, the first 4 programs to use LI squared were TANF programs that we partnered with in Colorado and in Minnesota and in California. So this is a framework for change designed with and for TANF programs in some respects. In the learn phase, it's about really taking time to understand what is our motivation for change. As Lisa mentioned and Jeanette emphasized, the pandemic disrupted a lot of the ways that we do business. But we shouldn't just take for granted the fact that there was disruption and we need to do something different. What exactly is the problem we're trying to solve for? What were the sort of root causes of that problem? Or why are we trying to change? What are we trying to improve? Be really clear about that, and then also think about how's the environment ready to support this change? Much like your body can have an autoimmune response to something foreign that comes into it, if you put something into a TANF program environment that it's not ready for, that environment will attack that change. And so we want to be ready. We want to know that the environment's ready to support that change. And we need to account for those potential challenges on the front end. So it's doing a really thoughtful needs assessment and learning for yourselves up front, and the coaches will walk you through that process. Then you might move into an innovation phase, taking this idea that you proposed in your self-nomination and really working with a coach and with a range of experts, getting input from your fellow sites in the TLC to design a research-informed solution. There's a lot of things in TANF that we don't have good answers for. And so it may be drawing on some best or promising practices, but there isn't an evidence-based model out there. So the innovation stage is being really thoughtful and intentional about designing your program innovation, coming up with a solid, what we call roadmap for change, and creating the sort of detailed core components of what that model looks like. And then as you move into the improve phase, it's about getting strong implementation. I've said many times that in the TANF field, it's not for a lack of good ideas that we don't have as good outcomes as we could have, but it's really about implementation that falters. We have a lot of great ideas, but it's really getting strong implementation of our great ideas that is essential to the sustainability of promising practices. And so that's what the improve phase is all about. Not evaluate, does it work, does it not, and then abandon, but it's how do we get it to work better? And so starting at a small scale, we've done testing with as few as 2 case managers and 10 participants, right? Starting as small as you need to and iterating, using that incubation period to really get it right and understand what works for whom and under what circumstances so that you can get it to work better. And at some point, you may reach a point where you want to evaluate it for effectiveness, but there's a long runway to get there. And so we want to help you in this 18-month initiative to really test and refine and get it to work better. And of course, that leads to further learning, innovation, and improvement. It's a cycle that repeats itself over and over. Let me say a little bit about this learning and community aspect. Jeanette sort of alluded to this, that we want to cultivate a community such that being a part of the TANF Learning Community means something more than just 6 or 7 or 10 teams participating alongside each other, that there's really some meaningful opportunities to cross-pollinate and to share best practices with one another, to benefit from the expertise of your peers in the field. And so we're going to work hard as a team to make sure that there are many opportunities for you to do that cross-site sharing and to benefit from experts in the field and the range of topic areas and methods that might be relevant to your projects. So we are expecting to launch the TLC in just a few months once this nomination period closes with an initial convening. That's of course going to be virtual given our constraints, and we hope to have many in-person opportunities down the line. But once we have that initial virtual convening to sort of launch our efforts, connect one another in August, then there will be opportunities as needed to have peer-to-peer learning, site exchanges, for maybe an opportunity for one site in Montana to visit a site in Idaho and really see what each other is working on. Or maybe it's a virtual site visit from your coach at strategically important points in your process. Not it has to happen every 5 months, but when it makes the most sense and is relevant to your work. We might host an in-person TANF Learning Community roundtable. That might be an opportunity to bring people together, say 12 or 14 months into this initiative, to really talk about some key issues related to the economy or using labor market information or career pathways, for example. And then as we talked about throughout, there will be webinars, there will be virtual events, things of that nature to keep you connected even when we're not together in person. And no initiative is complete without a closing bash. And so we hope to have a TLC capstone convening toward the end of this 18-month initiative, somewhere around December of 2022. That's just a little bit of a foreshadowing of the types of events that will help us to facilitate this learning and cross-sharing in community. So we've talked about a little of what you can expect from us, and we wanted to address then what would be expected of you if you choose to self-nominate and are ultimately selected for this initiative. It's 2 things really stand out here, and of course I'd refer you back to the guidance that you received in writing for some more details. But this is not sort of a quick and dirty TA initiative. This is an 18-month initiative. And so I think it's really important to highlight the fact that we're asking for a long-term commitment and an engagement on the part of your team. We want to make transformative change. That's not going to be something that happens overnight. And it's something that's going to take that longer-term commitment and engagement on your part to really progress toward overall program improvement and ultimately those better outcomes for the families that you serve. That impact is what we're ultimately in it for. And that's going to take a lot of work over the 18 months. To facilitate that, the way that we envision this being structured is that you will designate a site implementation team, 3 to 5 or so core leaders from your county, your state, your region, your tribe, to really spearhead this work. And those people are really responsible for owning it. We don't want this to be something that Jeanette or John or Mark or any of the rest of our talented team does for you. This is something where we want to walk alongside you and sort of be the wind in your sails, but you really are taking ownership. This is your initiative, it's your project, and we want to empower you to take it full course. And so that implementation team, that's really your group of folks who are going to champion this and move it forward. So how do you join the TLC if you're interested? So we've mentioned the self-nomination process a few times. That's really important. So we're in that period right now. We are accepting self-nominations through Wednesday, June 23rd at 6 p.m. Eastern Daily Time. So that's about 3 weeks from today, give or take a few hours. And So you would need to submit your self-nomination to that email address inbox listed on the screen, also available in the guidance documents that you've received. And we don't anticipate flexibility with that deadline. So please make sure that you're working towards submitting that self-nomination materials no later than the 23rd at 6. Then we'll move into a review phase where our federal partners will look at all of the applications received. They'll go through and score them according to the criteria and make some decisions about the sites that would be the best fit for the initiative. We expect to make those selection decisions in mid-July and notify the sites accordingly. And then we will be off to the launch. As I mentioned before, we're anticipating a launch convening in the middle of August. So very quickly, we'll get started with the sites that have been selected and get you prepared to participate in that virtual launch convening the middle of August. So the first step is, of course, submitting that self-nomination, and we're happy to answer questions that you might have about that process in just a little bit during the Q&A session. With that, though, I am going to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Jerry Cotter, to help answer this question of what has it looked like in the past? Jeanette and I can stand up here and talk till we're blue in the face, but it means a whole lot more to hear from somebody who's in your shoes. And Jerry Cotter is exactly that. So Jerry is the project manager of the Comprehensive Case Management and Employment Program with the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. She is definitely an innovator and a change agent. I've had the pleasure of working with her now for a little over 2 years on a separate initiative. And she's going to speak to her prior participation in a policy academy with OFA and just share a little bit about what was helpful to her and commend to you some benefits. So with that, Jerry.
Thanks, John. Yes, I was able to participate in a similar organization or grouping, and it was called the Policy Academy, but very similar to Learning Community. It also occurred over an 18-month period. We were able to get technical assistance, which was really helpful. We were trying to work towards implementing a coaching model for case management for our program. But with the technical assistance, you get objective, experienced consultants to advise you. Those technical assistance providers were able to help with research, researching different options and solutions, including if there's any evidence-based solutions similar to the changes we were trying to implement. They were also able to help with resources, things like examples for deliverables that we were trying to create, like timelines, strategic plans, readiness assessments, surveys. A lot of help there with different examples we could use in what we were trying to accomplish during our Policy Academy. They were also able to help us get connected with other localities that had implemented similar solutions in other states and localities around the US. And then one of the other things that they helped us with was to organize a demonstration of an open system that we were looking at to help with the development of career pathways. They were also very helpful in reviewing things. So they reviewed our planning, solutions, any other documents that we were creating as part of the effort, and provided feedback. So that was really helpful, that technical assistance support. The other thing that was helpful were the peer exchanges. They've talked about planning a number of peer exchange opportunities with the learning community. And it was really great to connect with other peers, states and localities that were trying to drive similar changes in their local region or area. And it was, I think, helpful to hear directly some of the things that they were encountering as they tried to move forward implementing solutions. It helped us to further develop our solutions, and then also just, I think, connecting with others and with similar programs, similar strategies. It helped us to develop our ideas further. And it was really good, I think, to get other perspectives and even just hear about other local policies in the similar program. So that was helpful. We were also able to connect with peers from prior policy academies and learning communities, which was helpful. So other states that had implemented something similar or other localities. That was helpful too. Hearing their experiences, things that they learned from their efforts to implement change. I think that between the technical assistance and the peer exchanges, it really helped Ohio and me to stay on track moving forward with our goals and the things we were trying to implement, especially over that 18-month period that we participated. And then we also have experience with the Learn, Innovate, and Improve methodology for implementation. And I really feel like after working with a number of counties in our state, it's really an effective way to ensure implementation is successful and long lasting and also, consistent. So I found that the process was agile and it allowed us to make adjustments early on as we were doing implementation, just starting out piloting. And then some of the other things I thought were helpful is that we were able to draw feedback from line staff, customers, leaders to see like what adjustments we needed to make as we started out with piloting and implementation. So in the learn phase, that's when we were identifying problems that we were hoping to solve and the reasoning behind having change. And then in the innovate phase, we were able to identify potential solutions with program stakeholders. And then during the improve phase, that's when we road tested or piloted our solutions. And then we did, revisions to the solutions and made minor adjustments, anything that came up as an issue to try and improve the change and implementation. Again, that was based on things that were identified by line staff, customers, and leaders. And the road testing also is very flexible. I mean, it could be as short as 2 weeks or longer, depending on the volume of customers and the opportunity you have to try out the solutions. And then, there's that refinement piece where we try and improve our solution as we continue with implementation. But I really felt like using that method, we've used it for several years now successfully, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from our local staff and leaders on this particular Learn, Innovate, and Improve methodology. And I really feel like this is a great opportunity, and I encourage you all to participate, especially if you're looking to make changes in your locality. I really feel like it helped keep us going, and we're continuing to try and make our changes here in Ohio too. So anyway, I really found it very valuable, and I hope you will too. And I'd like to hand it back to Jeanette.
Thanks a lot, Jerry. I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing your experience. Okay, with that, we actually want to spend the time answering questions you may have, making sure that you're getting access to, John mentioned it, the documents that have been shared is particularly the nomination guidance and instructions for the TANF Learning Community. And then also we put together top 12 questions that we had heard about, the frequently asked questions for the TANF Learning Community. I did just open my chat. I did not see that I had any questions, John, unless you see any. But if you want to unmute your line and share a question with us, as I said, we will try to answer that or point you to where in the documents you can find that answer. If I don't have the answer, I'm going to call on Lisa there and see if she'll have a response from an OFA perspective. So, any questions?
Jeanette, I have a question. This is Lisa. How will the self-nomination responses be difficult, or are you expecting a lengthy response?
No, both in the nomination guidance and instruction, as well as the frequently asked questions, we are asking that they submit, the state or local TANF agency or the tribe, submit a narrative response that is no more than 10 double-spaced pages using 12-point font. We do not want this overwhelming. There's a lot going on right now in your states, with other American Rescue dollars, as well as your pandemic funding that you're working with. And that will be due at, as John pointed out, at 6 o'clock. We do 6 p.m. on June 23rd. We don't want this overwhelming, and we really want to be reflective of where you want to spend your time and energy. In the nomination guidance, Lisa, right around on page 3, section E, it talks about the 3 components of review that we will be looking at, or the federal panel will be looking at. First is the section 1 is really focused on your motivation and what your strategic approach will be, and why you're self-nominating. Then there'll be a section that will be focused on what you expect to see, what kind of outcomes you want to achieve for your program and your TANF families, and what you can reasonably expect to improve through your proposed approach. And then lastly, there'll be a focus on organizational capacity and key personnel. Who are you dedicating, and what's your agency's readiness and preparedness to engage in a TLC? So it is concise, Lisa, and hopefully not too overwhelming for the sites.
And Jeanette, can I just add to what
Sure.
you shared and underline what I think is a really important point, and that is, we don't want this to be something that you add to your plate. As Jeanette said, there's already a lot on that plate, and it's probably spilling over onto the table. We want you to prioritize something that feels really important and meaningful as you emerge with your program from the pandemic. So this could be a really excellent opportunity to take the disruption and say, hey, we'd really like to rethink this aspect of our employment and training services, or we'd really like to redesign the way that we do this as we emerge from the pandemic. So think of it as an opportunity to catalyze some work you're already doing, rather than having to put one more project on your plate.
And let me, oh, go ahead, John.
No, I received a direct message question, so feel free to finish up that one and I can close it.
I was just going to say also, nominees are asked to make a commitment as part of their submission, but they do need a letter from their human service agency secretary or commissioner, or their tribal chair or chief executive. So there is a requirement, that is a requirement in the nomination process. And local agencies can submit, but they will need what's the right word? Consensus of the state.
Concurrence, a concurrence from the state.
Concurrence with the state, yes. Sorry, Lisa, yes. Okay, John, question?
Jeanette, your intuition was spot on. The question was, can you discuss what signatures and sign-offs are required? This can often take a lot of time. So I think you addressed it. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add about sign-offs and signatures.
No, unless people have a specific question. And maybe when you talk about concurrence of the state agency, Lisa, do you want to expand on that? Well, if I'm a local county interested in doing something, what would that look like?
I would imagine it would need to be something in writing, but it doesn't need to be a formal letter as it would have been, as it would need from the commissioner. As the federal government, our relationship is with the state. And although we welcome counties or local governments, local TANF agencies to participate, we still have to give our deference and respect to the state who we have a connection with. So that's why we said concurrence. Every state is different, so they might not necessarily need approval, but the state does need to know that they're participating.
Okay.
I got another question here. Could you provide me with an example of the type of activities we could invest our energies into for the TLC?
Well, there are, as I say, you know, we really focused in on the 3 areas. It could be anything from really thinking through how better to partner with your workforce agency, accessing local-based LMI data so that you have a better feeling for, or even state LMI data so that you can be better prepared for the training, education, and career pathways for your TANF families. You could be looking at organizational change that needs to happen, how you could think differently about services. We talk about hybrid services, in-person as well as virtual services. What does that look like? What are some of the technology changes maybe that you need to make? How are you going to be able to work together with other agencies to really share information more effectively? And maybe in some places, what we've seen is some real innovation on the ground and in the field with these TANF programs. How do you continue that work? And how do you do it in a post-pandemic way? Really strategies that drive, any kind of new human design thinking on your part, like how are you going to put the family at the center? Looking at really, did your caseload change? What does that look like? The changes in the economy, what did that do with the sector changes and opportunities for employment for some individuals? Are you getting a more middle skilled base in your TANF families all of a sudden because some of those jobs have disappeared with the economic impacts of the pandemic? John, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think those are some excellent examples. I'll just share a couple that came up under sort of other OFA technical assistance initiatives during the pandemic that I think would be good opportunities for kind of a TLC longer term innovation. So we've seen state TANF agencies who are operating a almost entirely home visiting model, right? That was totally upended in the pandemic, getting at this notion of in-person and virtual service delivery. They had to completely rethink their model to deliver services during this period of time. And so as we emerge, they have a lot of thinking to do. How do we maintain a whole family focused service delivery model that previously operated on once a month home visits to now maybe offer more flexibility to meet the family where they're at, but yet still honor that being in the home, meeting you where you're at sort of principle. So exactly what Jeanette was saying, sort of redesigning a model to operate in this new kind of hybrid context. Or maybe it's, we've seen sort of a TANF WIOA youth program that had to adapt in the pandemic, and they actually ended up developing a whole new sort of peer-led model to their service programming. And so they actually had youth stepping up to facilitate these groups. What does that look like over the long term if you were to sort of rethink the way that you engage youth in the programming, maybe develop groups where they have peer-to-peer support, and to address some of those social isolation issues that the pandemic brought to the fore of our minds, both for staff and for clients. I'm wondering too, maybe Jerry, if you have some examples of either questions that you had prior joining to the Academy about what would fit, or maybe some thoughts from your end because you see this and live it every day as a program manager.
Do you mean like what would fit into the policy?
Yeah, just some potential ideas from your
okay.
from your angle.
So we definitely looked into moving to a coaching model for case management for this particular learning community. It looks like maybe looking at some type of virtual services and expanding on that. I think that other things to look at would be how to better engage folks. So maybe streamlining some of the more burdensome aspects of programs to try and to help keep folks engaged towards working towards goals and keep up their motivation. Sometimes, when folks have, all they hear about is the requirements all the time. It's hard to look towards future goals for a career, things like that. So anything that I think helps with their hope and motivation and ongoing engagement in trying to work towards long-term goals like a career, I think is helpful.
Great.
And you could also spend some energies around looking at, and I know, John, you raised this a little bit, doing a root cause analysis of what your problem really is, where you want to go next, applying a racial equity lens to the work that you're doing, and what does that look like, and how do you build that into? So the TLC would be available to help you and support you in that as well. And better engagement of the stakeholders, making sure you got the right number of people, not number, but the right mix of people looking at some of your programming so that you really are making improvements that will matter and result in better outcomes. Any other questions? Quiet group.
Jeanette, there was one question. Will this, we send out the PowerPoint, or will there be a recording? Will the recording be sent? And we will post it on the Peer TA website, correct?
That is correct, yes. We will post it on the Peer TA website. The PowerPoint can be posted there, but the recording will also be posted there. So if you have colleagues that you want to share this with and they can listen to it, you know, you can direct them right to the Welfare Peer TA website or the OFA Peer TA website.
And Jeanette, I want to amplify a message that Jerry just put in the chat. She said, consider customer voice in any program improvement. So as people think about changes, one of your colleagues suggests always consider customer voice in any program improvement.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And Lisa, anyone who participated here and wants us to send out a copy, if we have your email, and I'd have to check to see if that we do, we'll directly send it to you also, but it will be available on the TANF Learning Community. John, can you put up the slide 8 that just talks about this? Yeah, that's it. Oh,
sorry about that. There we go.
Yep. So this, you know, your self-nominations, you can send questions if you have questions that you think about as you go through the materials and you want an answer. You can send questions to the TANF Learning Community at blhtech.com. You submit your nomination by Wednesday, June 23rd, 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time to that box also. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, we'll try to get back to you within 24 hours. We monitor that regularly. If you don't have materials or you've only heard about this and you want the materials, please contact us and we'll send them out to you. That's not a problem directly. And so submission comes in basically the 3rd week of June. Review will take place for about 3 weeks, and we anticipate selection somewhere around mid-July, and the launch of the TLC convening, the first convening in mid-August. But things will happen between mid-July and mid-August to support the teams and the startup of the implementation teams and the team leaders. But I wanted that up so that's where you can post other and different and new questions if you come up with any.
Got a question here around the coaches. Who will they be, and what will our work with them look like in those biweekly meetings and in our ongoing engagement?
As Lisa says, you know, OFA has been doing policy academies and learning communities for 2 decades, and the coaches play a very important role. And it is one of facilitation and not telling you what you're doing, but supporting you in you owning what you're doing and helping you access resources, tools, products, resources and people and subject matter experts, identifying promising practices elsewhere. But it really is, a coach role has always been one of a facilitator, one that is working side by side with you. And I think John voiced that. It's really working with you and not, you know, you're not doing things that are required for us. You're doing things that you need to get done in order to advance your work. Coaches are a varied group of people. Several of them have been coaches previously at other policy academies and learning communities. They come from the field. They are former TANF directors or county TANF managers. They are really a mix of individuals who are who have really shown how they can work as what I say, this lead support structure, in this lead support structure as a key facilitator. John, you want to add, or Jerry, you had a coach?
I did. I really found them very supportive and more helpful than what you might think of like a sports coach, right? Because they're going to actually help you get things done too. And so they're not just cheering you on, but they're actually a really helpful resource. And I found them to be very supportive. I worked with a number of coaches because I had 2 different grants, and they were all very helpful. So I really recommend it.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add that I think a really good coach is kind of like a really good concierge or a general contractor. They might not be able to do it for you, but they can find the right person for the job or the right resource to come alongside you and support. And so that coach is really going to be there and say, oh, you need some expertise in this area? Let me get the expert there. Or you need some help really refining your model? Let's work through this activity and kind of flesh that out some more. Maybe let's do a design session with some of your families and program participants to understand more what really is the challenge with engagement. Why is nobody showing up to orientation? And are you experiencing this high attrition rate? Things like that. So your coach is really there to help connect you. And as Jeanette said, facilitate your process rather than do for you.
Okay. Any other questions coming in, John?
I don't have any others right here, but if there are any other burning questions, please throw them in the chat or unmute. We'd love to hear your voice.
Yeah. And Lisa, have we left out anything in this that you want to emphasize?
No, I just I want to thank everyone for coming and to let them know and reemphasize, because you've said, you and John have said that this will be their project, and we're here to be responsive and to provide information and nudging by the coaches to help them reach their goals. So this is definitely participant-led initiative.
Okay. All right. Well, we still have about 9 or 8 minutes left here. If there's no, feel free, as John said, unmute, put in a question in the chat box, or we will call it a day. Again, the PowerPoint and the recording will be available on the OFA PRTA website. And accessing any of the documents we talked about, again, there is nomination guidance and instructions, which is only 4 pages long, but it does, specifically address the key questions that you need to answer in your 10 pages. And we also have an FAQ up. So those are available via the TANF Learning Community, and they're also available off the OFA PRTA website. You can download it right from there. Anything we missing? Oh,
one more question here. What, if any, costs should we expect to incur?
Good question. Excellent question. There is no grant funding associated with this learning community. Sometimes there are in the past with policy academies and learning communities. All of the TA that you will receive, the robust TA services, are all free of charge to you. Any kind of travel of subject matter experts or coaches to your site are all covered by the TLC and is not to be paid for by you in any way. And there is funding available you know, this is kind of, you know, the pandemic is, as we say, you know, business as usual is not business as usual. And so we are hoping that the December timeline, by December of 2022, when we wrap this up, that will be an in-person meeting, and that, as John pointed out, site exchanges, site visits, potentially the roundtable, all of those activities that may take place in, you know, in 2022, early 2022, will be in person, and all those are covered in the TLC. For the in-person convening, I believe there is funding for up to, and I'm going to look at my own notes here, up to 5 individuals from a site to be covered for your travel. So there will be travel coverage. It's not really a reimbursement as much as it is, yes. There's no financial support to participate in the TLC, but OFA will provide TTA services and limited travel support for a potential in-person activities in 2022. So as you go to the roundtable or you go to the capstone, at the capstone event in December, they will support travel of no more than 5 team members. So that's
right. But Jeanette, if there is an in-person meeting, and we're all keeping our fingers crossed, and if a team wants more than 5 people to attend, the additional people will be at that team's expense. We will support up to 5 people, but if more than 5 people choose to attend, then that would be an expense that the selected teams would have to incur.
Mm-hmm. Any points of clarity needed? Okay. All right. Well, with that, we have about 4 minutes to spare here. I will say thank you for participating. We are really excited that there was that many interested registrations from 21 different states, and we are really encouraged and hope that you will really, you know, think seriously about self-nominating and being part of this opportunity. So thank you. Lisa, do you want to say closing words or?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mark, Jeanette, and John, and the BLH and Mathematica team. And thank everyone for joining us and participating. We hope that you will nominate yourselves to participate in the TLC. I think it will be a worthwhile experience, and we will provide the services and support to help you meet your goals. Thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.